I understand, as the National Party do, that we're going to need to rely on immigrants more and more in the future because we have an ageing population. So it's really important to make sure that, firstly, we're training up our young people so that they can have the highly skilled jobs in the future, that they're our number one go-to when we're filling highly skilled positions. But we certainly are going to need to also backfill that with migration as well and immigrants as well. And so we need to make sure that we have a really good immigration policy that means that we're on the same footing as Australia or Canada or the UK, making sure our immigration settings are on equal footing, and that we're incentivising people with skills to come here. And that doesn't just mean our immigration settings, but it means our broader settings around our health system, our education system, and our economy and our law and order. The reason people come to this country is because we're safe, we've got great education, great health system, and a good economy. And at the moment, you couldn't really say a lot of those things are true. So we have to get those settings right so that actually skilled people like doctors and engineers and nurses and teachers actually want to come to this country. So it's that dual, making sure that we've got a great country for them to come to, but also we've got good immigration settings that make it easy for them to choose to come here rather than Australia. Yeah, well, I mean, the industries you were just talking about around fruit picking, for example, most of the accommodation that's provided for the RSE workers is purpose-built accommodation more and more these days. In fact, it's a requirement. So you are making sure that when you're bringing in a number of migrants to pick fruit and harvest fruit, that they're staying in purpose-built accommodation and not taking accommodation away from Kiwis. But you're right, in a more broad sense with immigration, you've got to get those two things right. Make sure that we're bringing in the migrants we need to build the infrastructure we need, but then also making sure that, that we're getting that balance right of migrants and Kiwis who both need housing. So I work really closely with Chris Bishop, who's our housing and infrastructure spokesperson, just to make sure that we are getting that balance right. So when we set our residency numbers, for example, that we know that we can accommodate those people in terms of hospitals, schools, roads and housing. We put out our nursing policy just recently, actually, which talks about bonding our nursing students for 5 years and writing off their loan during that period, so that we are attracting people into the profession because they know that they will leave without a student loan, but just requesting that they stay here for 5 years. We already do that in the education sector as well through a couple of different programs, Teach First and the voluntary bonding scheme, and we are looking at how do we encourage more people through those programs by potentially loosening some of the criteria so that we can attract more people into teaching, bonding them here for 5 years so that they can also come out with our loan, so making it more attractive to get into teaching.